Hello, science buddies! Today, we are going to learn about Mr. Newton's three laws of motion. But before that, let us first know who is Mr. Isaac Newton. How did he discover his laws? And what are the examples of these laws? Well, the answers are in this video. Sir Isaac Newton was born on the 4th day of February, year 1643. He was a talented and intelligent person. We can say this because he was once a mathematician, physicist, astronomer, alchemist, theologian, and at the same time, a philosopher. He obtained his degrees in these following universities, namely the University of Cambridge, Royal Society, and Royal Mint. Back to his works, he have laid off this, and this. Ang dami, no? But the most known are this one. However, do you know that Sir Newton also lived like us? Like normal or average people? It was because the same with us Filipinos whom parents usually want us to take the course they wanted, Sir Isaac's mother on the other hand wanted him to be a farmer. It was because his family's primary source of living was through farming. Unfortunately and thankfully, he declined his mother's suggestion, and that was somehow one of the factors of the discovery of the laws of motion, which was studied, conducted, and proved by none other than Mr. Isaac Newton himself. So, before we dive in, let us first recall motion. So, motion in physics is the phenomenon in which an object changes its position over time. So, it is mathematically described in terms of displacement, a vector which points from initial position of an object to its final position. You can find this by multiplying velocity and time. The distance, a scalar quantity that refers to how much ground an object has. You can find this by using or multiplying speed and time. Velocity, a vector quantity that measures displacement over the change in time. So, you can find this by dividing change in displacement divided by the change in time. One is the acceleration, which is a rate at which velocity changes with time in terms of both speed and direction. We can find this by dividing the change in velocity and the change of time. The fifth one is the speed. So it is how fast an object is moving. We can find this by dividing the distance divided by the time. And lastly is the time, which is a progression of events from the past to the present into the future. We can find this by dividing the distance over the speed. Going back, how did Sir Newton discover the laws of motion? So, he got interested in this during the times when he developed the concept of MASS. Yes, you're correct. The mass, and everything pushed him to the creation of these laws, the laws of motion, because he was curious about inertia, momentum, and many more. So he wrote this on his book, which has a title of Book Principia. So he explained in these laws the relationship between the body and the forces acting on it. So the first law of motion is the law of inertia. So he stated that a body at rest stays at rest and a body in motion stays in motion unless acted by an external force. So let's say there's a ball. So a ball stays at rest kung walay ma-apply na force or kung dili siya hilaptan. On the other hand, let's say a ball is placed moving on an obstacle-free environment or place. So the ball will really continue to move forever if walay external force nga ma-apply sa iyaha. Same goes that an object continues to do the action unless some external or unbalanced force acts in them. So that's the first law of motion, which is the law of inertia. So, the second law of motion is the law of acceleration and force. So he stated that the force acting on an object is equal to the mass of that object times its acceleration. So, this law is the application of the first law of motion. Let's say a ball develops a certain amount of acceleration after being hit. The acceleration with which the ball moves is directly proportional to the force applied to it. So this means that the harder you hit the ball, the faster it will move, thereby demonstrating Newton's second law of motion in our life. So, lastly, the third law of motion is the law of action and reaction. So he stated that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. In shorter words, the force exerted on the object exerts an equal force back in you. So let's say when you dribble a ball, so as the ball falls, an action is created on the time or during the time it hits the floor. On the other hand, a reaction occurs pushing in opposite after it hits or the ball hits the floor. So that's the third law of motion. So, those are the three laws of motion discovered by Sir Isaac Newton. So these three laws of motion became the foundation of classical mechanics. So that's the end of our discussion today. I hope you have learned a lot and something in this video. See you in the next one. Goodbye.